Hello, you are watching Got Questions. We wanted to create a space to discuss the questions that Gen Z are actually asking. The aim of the show is not to have all the answers, but hopefully to journey together in discovery.
That's right. Now, this content is being created by Alpha Youth. Alpha, also known as the Alpha Course, is an opportunity to explore the meaning of life, faith, and purpose in a safe space where no question is off the table.
Today, we're talking all about feminism and gender equality. Have we really and truly changed from how things have been for the longest time? Are women really equal to men?
Let's find out. Let's get into the conversation. All right, guys, before we get into our chat, which is all about gender equality, this has been called Ladies First. So, ladies first, do you remember the 3 key cultures that we have around this couch?
Love listens.
Yeah.
Disagree respectfully.
Yep. Pressure's on you.
And agree.
All the time. Always agree.
She's like, just make that one up. Oh, I've got that.
It's okay to disagree.
It's
No,
okay.
your opinion's valued.
Your opinion's
thoughts
valid.
are
Agree
valued.
value was no, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Guys, let's jump straight into it. So today is all about gender equality, feminism, which is like everyone's favourite topic. I've got a question for you. Is chivalry dead?
Can you describe chivalry?
Okay, I've actually got a definition for us over here. Courteous behaviour, especially that of a man towards a woman.
I mean, everyone wants to be treated respectfully, right? It's just respect. I think that's what that sounds like to me. And I mean, I expect it both ways. I'm not going to treat you disrespectfully and expect respect back. But yeah, I think chivalry's, if that's the definition, I'll take it.
I wouldn't say it's dead, but I don't think it's taught as much. Or it's not as, maybe as an importance in this generation compared to maybe back in the days.
Are you chivalrous?
I'm like chivalrous.
Chivalrous.
I hope so. If I'm not, I feel like my mum would tell me. So I get in trouble if I'm not.
So have you boys been sort of educated to be chivalrous, like open doors for girls, pay the bill if you're going out, that sort of thing?
Yeah, for sure. I think growing up with sisters, it does help. Like, it's just part of your everyday life, I guess. But I do understand, like, what you were saying. Like, I don't think it's as maybe shown as much in maybe our culture when, with us guys, but which is a shame. But maybe it's shown in different ways.
I guess for the girls in the room, like, do you feel as if, you know, things should be 50-50? Or do you feel as if, no, guys should do certain things that are, like, gentlemanly, like? Like, are there boundaries? Do you ever feel like, oh, no, you shouldn't pay, I want to pay? Or, like, don't open my door, I'll open my own door. Is there ever, like, a time where it feels like, actually?
I don't know, we were created differently. And I was listening to a podcast this morning and it was Sadie Robertson, and she was talking about how, well, a man was made up of dust, and like a woman's role is kind of like to talk to him about, like, yes, you're made of this dust, which is where you like fall short, you're not, you know, God, but you were also made by the hands of God and all of this. But then she goes on to say, and then it's the man's role to turn around to her and say, like, you were made out of bone, which, you know, you think of a carcass on the side of a road, like, you don't really pick that up. But God took a rib out and made us. And then his job is to remind her that you are made out of the hands of God. Like, God made you with his hands. And it's, like, both have the job of telling each other, like, raising each other up in slightly different ways because we are so different. And I think that's how I see it, is we're different. So we're going to treat each other differently, and I expect different things from you, just as you should expect different things from me. But, you know, at the end of the day, we're both made by God, and that makes us special.
It's interesting. So it's like, you know, when it comes to women, we talk about gender equality. And when it comes to men, we talk about, like, toxic masculinity. And I don't know if you guys are sort of familiar. Who would be able to describe what that is, or would you not?
I would actually love maybe if girls would want to say what they think toxic masculinity is.
Telling, like, guys, being told that they have to be, like, ultra masculine, like, go to the gym, you know, man, make dinner, and, like, break rocks and, you know, like, what's it called, cavemen. It's kind of like they got to be strong. Like, there's no feminine to them. And then that's comes into our culture of like, you know, you've got to go out and be the breadwinner. You've got to, you know, dress a very manly way, go to the gym and all these things.
I think toxic masculinity can also be in stereotypes. So I don't know if you girls have ever had jokes where they're like, oh, but you should be in the kitchen anyways. So just guys doing jokes to girls like that, or guys thinking, oh, because you're the woman, you have to stay at home with the kids and not being able to work after you have kids. And I think that can also be toxic masculinity, thinking, oh, because you're supposed to be the more caring one in the relationship, you stay and do this, you like sit in your position and I'll be the one that's providing, which is he can provide, but so can she.
Yeah. Have you guys ever experienced like people maybe pressuring you to be a certain way as men, or like do you feel a pressure there in like toxic masculinity?
100%. But like, I think that's just life. Like, I don't think you can really ever get away with it. I think there's a part of me that's like, I think about my mum and dad and like the way they've done their marriage, and I always think about like maybe toxic masculinity in that sense, but like I more mean like in traditions, and how I do agree that like sometimes like love works with like certain roles, and like I do understand that hugely, but I do agree with like what Val was kind of saying with the whole breadwinners kind of stuff. But then there is like an element to like toxic masculinity where you know, the whole, you know, the guy has to be the breadwinner and the lady has to stay at home. And I never want to feel like the person who I marry has to feel like they can't ever like achieve what they want to achieve. And I think that's where toxic masculinity can get involved, when it's like the guys actually can sometimes put more pressure over themselves than what other people are actually putting on them, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was reading something the other day, and basically it was like, men are like set up to ultimately be toxic because, like, if they do something well, we say that they're a beast. If they like, you know, if they doing something like, I don't know, the best, you're killing it. Like, I don't know, they were like saying that, like, we use all of these very aggressive, very like, we never say that was beautiful, or like, you know, hey, by the way you hit that ball, that was beautiful, or like we never really say something like you smashed it, you know what I mean? And it's like, have we set men up to not feel comfortable in like being softer and being more like, I don't know, what we would traditionally say, feminine?
Or emotional.
Emotional, yeah.
And you know, like, boys don't cry.
Yeah.
And so, you know, my wife, you know, is very open with crying, but if I've probably cried a handful of times in front of her, and if I do, it's like a big deal, right? Because it's just doesn't, I don't cry much because I was kind of taught you man up. But really what's happened is that everyone's manned up, so they haven't been able to man down and get the help they've needed, you know. What about you boys? Would you cry in front of people? Would you be embarrassed to cry?
Yeah, so like, I've done one of those tests, kind of like aptitude tests, and empathy is like, it's one of my top qualities. So I've grown up being a quite sensitive soul. Can you lie? You know, but it is true that I've definitely cried in front of people, and it's not something I'd say like I'm ashamed of, but it is something where like initially I'll try and like, you know, hide the tears, like something's in my eye, I'm trying to get out. But yeah, literally, I'm cooking in the kitchen. But I don't know. I think once you process it, it's like, this is my body's, I mean, I'm feeling a type of way, this is my natural reaction. I like to be quite real and quite honest and quite raw. So hey, if I gotta do what you gotta do, like, I'll cry, that's chill. But I can see how it's harder for like most men.
So what about girls? When lads around you start crying, are you like, whoa, what's going on? Or do you like it? Are you cool with it?
I think even for my dad, when like I used to never see him cry at all most of my time growing up, and then ever like recently, I think now that we can actually talk more about our feelings, my dad's got a lot more sensitive, and he actually now does cry sometimes, and it's actually really nice because especially with boys, even around me, like friends that are boys, often I see them like the most I see them crying is when they're spending time with God. But you know, even with just a normal situation when they cry, I don't tend to see it happen. So I think for me, I quite like seeing guys cry. It's quite humbling. It's quite nice just to see their emotions the same way we are.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's surprising at first because we're not used to seeing it, but I agree. I think it's so nice. It makes me feel more human because it makes me feel like, oh, it's not just a girl thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a brother and a dad, and I'd never seen either of them cry until I was, like, my brother, like, we're not the closest, like, we never have been, but, like, I always wanted to be closer to him. Like, growing up, I always wanted to be him. Like, I thought he was the coolest person ever. And, like, so because we'd never had a closeness, I'd never even heard him cry. And so then he went through a breakup, and I remember him coming over to me and crying on my shoulder. And because, like, I'd never seen him cry with his best friends, his girlfriends, my parents even, I was like, this is a really special moment that's only mine. Like, you've shown me this side of yourself, a side of yourself you don't show. And, like, you've shared that experience with me. You clearly trust me. And, like, it's the closest I've ever felt to him. And, like, since then, like, I can say, like, yeah, I think my brother actually likes me, maybe even loves me. Whereas before, it's kind of like a doubt thing, like, but in, like, moments like those, you realise this person actually trusts me and loves me enough to show themselves in a way that they've been probably told not to. And, yeah, so for me, it's like, okay, we're trusting each other when we do it.
Guys, we've also got a guest who's going to be joining us. We're going to continue the conversation a little later on, but right now, let's check in with our regional alpha youth. Take a look.
I think the only way we could change this in the future is to think, like, what are the right questions that we need to ask before seeking the right solutions?
I see my generation making a very positive change towards this, because you see us taking up spaces that a lot of people are not comfortable with. You see us entering male-dominated spaces and being happy to do that and being proud to say that, yes, we are females and we are going to do this.
I don't think it's moving as fast as the like facade presents it as. I think in the media there's a lot of like, we're doing great, we're moving so fast towards like gender pay gap and, you know, closing the pay gap and everything, but I don't think that it is as fast as everyone thinks. And like Colton said, there's a lot of underlying issues that need to be addressed and not just the, you know, surface level products of those issues.
Because as men and women to bring to the church, it's really important that we use both.
It's a more comfortable conversation. But interestingly, men have also become full allies. We're seeing that across board. So you have men who are enabling women, whether it's in politics or in business or even just in regular life.
The awareness is spreading really, really rapidly, and people are actually more open to that topic more than any other topic.
I love that. I think it's so important that we do hear from different people from different cultures and different environments. But we're going to continue our conversation here. We got with us a special guest. Put your hands together for Michael Dua. Thank you so much for joining us. I've got a little bit of your bio here. You are the founder of Transcend X, which is developing the next generation of leaders. So youth, young people. You're a youth advocate, mindset coach, and public speaker.
Yeah, wow, I didn't realize I did all that. Yes, yes.
So good, man. Well, we're going to get into the conversation. Like, it's a heavy topic, and we're just going to kind of get into it. But before we do, let's just think all about, you train young people, give them leadership skills. When you chat to young people at the moment, do they seem up for leadership, or they're like running away from leadership?
It's a really great question. I think for a lot of young people, they are in both camps. Some of them want it, some of them don't want it. Those that don't want it, it's predominantly down to not having great examples of leadership before them. And so for many people, it's this whole thought or fear of not being like what they've seen already. And then you have those who are hungry for it because what they've seen, they don't believe is a great example of leadership. And so now they're saying, well, we can do that better. We can affect change and we can be different to the generation that's gone before us. And so it really depends on where these young people are, where they've been situated, what they've seen, what's been around them, who's led them. But predominantly, I do believe that the next generation is up for leading. And part of that is because I think leadership is not just influence, but also responsibility. It's the desire and the want to say, I'm going to take responsibility here. And I think when someone takes responsibility, they're already leading.
I love that. Because when it comes down to like role models, that word role model isn't really used that much these days. It's more like influencers. And influencers change your outside, right? Like wear this makeup, go on holiday to this place, like the external. But role models, when I was growing up, change your inside. It's like your character and your values. How do you sort of be a good role model? And so what are some of the things that you're saying to help young people have good role models?
Yeah, I think really it's challenging young people to look deeper than the surface. I think we're living in a generation now where everything's quite surface level. It's all about what you see on the outside, not what's going on the inside. And we know that whatever's going on the inside will eventually come to the outside. And so really it's helping them to learn to love things like discipline, learning them to take things like responsibility. Because I think it's very easy at times, especially when things go wrong, to point the finger at where it went wrong, how it went wrong, why it's not your fault. But actually to grow as an individual and to mature, taking responsibility and learning this thing called discipline allows you, when motivation's gone, to keep going with that thing. And so developing strong habits in them and getting them to see that actually it's not always about the immediate. Sometimes this is about not even about you, this is about your children. Right. This is about people in your community. And when we start getting young people to think generationally, think about legacy, we can start helping them to be the leaders that the next generation needs. So yeah.
Amazing. Well, let's continue the conversation then, because a lot of this stuff that we're talking about has a big impact through the different generations. So anyone got any questions for Michael, any thoughts?
Do you feel like as a society we're becoming closer to becoming more gender equal and accepting just being more equal and more balanced?
That's a great question. I think that I can answer from a position of privilege, being a man, because we live in a society that's patriarchal. So the reality is my answer would always be probably hindered from what is the actual truth. I think having spoken to other women leaders, we're moving forward. We're just not there yet. And so, is the glass half full? Is it half empty? I would like to be positive and say it's half full, but I think in a lot of areas and a lot of spaces in different industries in our society, it's half empty. There's good, strong women leaders who should be leading in positions and places that they're not, or they're overlooked. And often that's because simply of their gender. And so I like to be an optimist and say we are moving forward. One step forward is forward. The question isn't, are we moving forward? Are we moving forward quick enough? And so, and I think that will be different in different spaces you go to. But I think in certain spaces, we're just moving a bit slower than others,
So being like a mentor then for young men and women, do you think that men get more opportunities than women?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. And I think, often it's because of whoever's in that leadership position, they might feel more comfortable putting a male leader in, or it might just be like this unconscious bias of just actually, I'm in this position and I don't really see women, I just see men are fit for this role. So I do think that, to answer your question very simply, yes, but I don't think it's always intentional. I think sometimes it's simply because of the way it's set up. And I go to some spaces and actually majority of the leadership team is women. And part of the dynamics in those spaces is because actually in and amongst that community, what you predominantly have is women who attend that community or who are part of that community. So therefore, the natural lean is we need leaders, women step up. So, but the challenge is that we need to get to a space of is who's best for this role.
Actually, off the back of what Val was saying, us men, what can we do to advance the narrative and help create more gender equality in the workplace or in day-to-day life?
Yeah, I think we have to be mindful of what's happening amongst us. We have to be mindful of our own conduct as men in terms of making women feel comfortable to be able to be in positions of leadership and to be safe amongst us. I think really beginning to see where we can come alongside and be advocates and be voices for women, but not always feeling like we have to now come in and be the hero. Because I think naturally as men, we think we always need to be the hero or we need to fix it. We need to change this, we need to shift this. And so sometimes it's actually being able to just sit and have a conversation and listen and understand. And I think sometimes it's being able to open a door. And what I mean by that is actually, I'm in a privileged position where I know someone who's gifted, who is a female, is a woman, and actually she will be great for this role. Yeah. And being able to intentionally begin to think that way, to say, right, how do we bring our sisters in here? How do we get like some of the most gifted and talented speakers or leaders in the country into this space who are women, you know? So I would say being a friend, a genuine friend, being a microphone for people, so being able to carry their voice to spaces, into rooms, talk well of people in rooms that you're in that they're not in. And hopefully we can begin to shift that. And I think sometimes it's just actually me just taking a practical step of bringing a woman alongside or bringing her into the mix so that she can be a part of the conversation or be focal in that place.
On this topic of toxic masculinity, what do you think the effects are of this, and how do you think we can, work towards making it less toxic?
Great question. Great question. I think being a man, growing up in where I grew up, I think when I look back at my upbringing, I think toxic masculinity was something that I faced, and it was just normal. So it wasn't toxic, it was masculinity. Yeah. And I think the challenge with the term toxic masculinity is that if we're not careful, we can get to a space where we think masculinity itself is toxic. Wow. When it's not, it's how it's done. And so I think there's cultural pressures that cause us to really begin to live a way that is toxic. So whether that might be when you're little, I remember if I fell over, it'll be like, come on, get up, don't cry, what are you crying for? It doesn't hurt. If my sister fell over, oh, what's happening, are you okay, are you all right? You know, so there's those moments. So now there's this internal thing going on when I'm emotional, when I'm hurt by something someone said, where I'm like, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry. Now, having said that, there's going to be some women who feel that sometimes, don't cry, don't cry, don't cry, be strong, be strong, be strong. And so there is things that they call drivers that you can do a questionnaire on, which tells you what drives you. So one of those drivers is be strong, please others, hurry up, be perfect. All of try harder. All of these subliminal signals going on in our heads telling us how we should behave can actually impact how, as men, we behave and how our masculinity comes out. So whether that's being strong, whether that's being aggressive, whether that's actually being disrespectful to women or being disrespectful to other men or being the alpha, whatever it might come across as, there is this, tendency for us based on what's driving us subconsciously to maybe be toxic or not. Now, the other angle is that actually the reality is that all of us are human beings, and therefore we struggle with this thing called sin, which makes us imperfect. So therefore, my masculinity is going to come out in imperfect ways that could be seen toxic sometimes, not intentionally, but just due to my nature. So, you know, I feel Jesus is the greatest example of good masculinity. of what it means to be a good man. He was able to advocate for women and bring women into spaces that they weren't allowed to be in. He was able to confront men in a healthy way and challenge them on their behavior. He wept. We see throughout the Bible Jesus being a perfect example of masculinity. And I think, you know, probably contrary to popular belief, he wasn't just meek, mild, soft, etc. And I think that's why maybe sometimes a lot of men can't necessarily identify with Jesus because of the picture that's been painted of him. But he was strong, he was sure, he knew who he was, and he was able to really, really bring that out. So I hope I answered your question.
No, yeah.
Michael, this has been so, so helpful. Thank you so much for joining us. Why don't we give Michael... It's been priceless, thank you. Why don't we end in some prayers? So who would like to pray?
Yeah, I can.
Brilliant.
Yeah, dear Jesus, thank you so much just for the conversations that we get to have. Thank you that it's healthy and it's fruitful. I just pray that even outside of this room, we get to have really healthy conversations, and that we get to just healthily and respectfully just discuss how we feel. And yeah, would you help us just to bring justice and just bring peace and fruit from all the conversations that are conflicted with equality, and yeah, would you just help us all just to look at you for the perfect model and the perfect role model for just our lives. Yeah, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. We'd love to hear from you, so feel free to get in touch. We hope you enjoyed our chat today.
And if you have never joined an Alpha course, they take place across the globe, online and in person, and they're not just for youth. Everyone of every age, of every background and experience can be part one. They're strictly inclusive, so why don't you join us?
If you want to know more, head to alpha.org/youth and check out our social media channels. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
I never want to stop my wife from feeling like she's my wife again. Okay. It is something where, like, initially I was trying to, like, hide the tears, like, there's something in my eye.